It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the groups and teams of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at Group E: Belgium, Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine. Here we go! It's the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada, Series 25. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor. And today we are looking at Group E for the Euro Cup 2024 tournament. This group is made up of Belgium, Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine.
Yeah, we're currently focused on the 2024 Euro Cups and Copa America. Both of those played in June 2024. And we're producing this group and team series as well as a player series for each. There are two parts to this media cast.
In part one, we give a summary of each team's World and Euro Cup histories. We'll also take a bit of a closer look at their recent history and form, including how they qualified for this tournament.
Yeah, and in part two, we'll look at the teams in comparison to each other in the groups, looking at their rankings, head-to-head history, and their chances of success. And we'll end with a discussion of their prospects and our predictions.
All right, well, let's get into it.
Well, actually, before we do, I have something to say. I actually had this Euro 2020 shirt that I'm wearing. And I've had it all along and didn't realize it. Instead, I've been wearing a Canada jersey, which is entirely inappropriate for this look at the Euro Cup.
Well, I go back a little bit further with my Road to Euro 2016 shirt, which has the flags of all the nations.
Okay, well, I think we're usually comically off topic, so we might as well make a shtick out of it. Okay, let's begin with part one and a look at the team's kind of overall history and strength. And we begin with Belgium. Peculiarly, can you say it?
Peculiarly? I'm not sure.
Thank you. When Belgium has done well in World Cup play, they have not in Euro Cup. And the reverse is true until recently, at least. Despite reaching 5 World Cups to 1978, including 4 of the first 5 tournaments, they had not passed the group stage. The 1970 tournament did, however, see them reach their first Euro Cup, and they earned 3rd in 1972 and 2nd in 1980. While that Euro record fell off, reaching only 2 tournaments over the next 20 years and knocked out of the group stage in both, their World Cup play skyrocketed, passing the group stage for 5 of the next 6 tournaments from 1982. They peaked with a 4th place finish in 1986. Their World Cup form also fell off after 2002, and they didn't reach a tournament for more than 10 years in either competition. In 2014, however, there emerged a talented generation that for the first time saw them going regularly beyond the group stage in both cups, and which earned them their best World Cup finish, 3rd place in 2018.
In terms of recent performances, their golden generation emerged in 2014, and despite reaching the heights of #1 in world rankings, they never quite lived up to that billing in cups. Nevertheless, they did pass the group stage of 4 cups in a row, peaking with a 3rd place finish in the 2018 World Cup, as you mentioned, but otherwise knocked out at the quarterfinal stage. With the generation still intact, a similar result was expected in the 2022 World Cup, but a flat performance saw them knocked out at the group stage. With members of the golden generation retiring, fears of a return to weaker form were heightened, with the 2nd place finish in their Nations League 2022-2023 group, with 2 losses to Netherlands and a tie with nemesis Wales, who earned their only campaign point from that game. A solid qualification for the 2024 Euro Cup, though, leaves that question unresolved, and we'll talk about that more.
Yeah, in the discussion, we will talk about whether they're kind of in decline. And we're also going to look at those two recent campaigns, the 2022-23 Nations League. We haven't been looking at this in all of the group previews that we've done, but just for the groups where we think it's relevant. And I think for this group, it is pretty relevant. Can you take us through that campaign? It was in mostly in 2022. Just the final stages, which involved 4 teams, was in 2023. So this actually took place before the World Cup.
Yeah. So Belgium were grouped with Netherlands, Poland, and Wales. And with respect to Poland and Wales, Belgium and Netherlands were really expected to be fighting out to the top 2 and be close. Belgium maybe even favored over their neighbors. But in the end, it wasn't that close, as the Netherlands beat them both home and away, including a 4-1 win in Belgium. Belgium dropped points in Wales in a 1-1 tie, and otherwise beat Poland twice and Wales at home. But 6 points behind the Netherlands from the second place meant it wasn't as close as perhaps predicted.
Yeah, I mean, really hot and cold. They started with a 4-1 loss at home to Netherlands, and then followed that up with a 6-1 win over Poland. So kind of all over the place here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at their campaign. We said in the overview that it was better.
Yeah. Belgium actually won all 4 of their away games, but dropped points twice at home. Those were 1-1 draws with Austria and Sweden, who finished 2nd and 3rd in the group. The other teams were Azerbaijan and Estonia, who Belgium beat quite easily. It was a bit closer away in Azerbaijan. So they ended the campaign undefeated, but only 1 point ahead of Austria, who performed quite well in this qualifying campaign.
Yeah. Anyway, certainly that is not showing much in terms of signs of decline, but we'll get to that discussion later and move on with team number 2, Romania. And let's look at their kind of overall history. Romania's king was supportive of soccer and financed their participation in the first World Cup, an arduous boat trip to Uruguay that only 4 European teams braved. Their participation has been impressive, missing only the 1950 World Cup and withdrawing in 1962, but participating in all Euro Cups from the first in 1960. Reaching the first 3 World Cups can be seen as a strong period, although they were knocked out at the group stage each time. The 1990s was truly their strongest period, now only reaching 3 World Cups, not only reaching 3 World Cups in a row, but passing the group stage in each, with a quarterfinal finish in 1994 as their best result. That period continued into Euro 2000 and their only trip beyond the group stage in that competition. Otherwise, they have a smattering of appearances in World and Euro tournaments, always ending with a group stage exit, some of which were disappointing because they followed strong qualifications, which offered promise going into the Cups. Generally, they finish mid-table and have several times come close to Cups but failed. Only in 2010, where they finished 5th of 6 in the table, behind Lithuania, did they appear weak. And even in that qualification run, they tied France twice.
Yeah, so some inconsistency there. But actually, recent times have been one of the most inconsistent in their history. Undefeated qualification campaigns for the 2016 and 2024 Euro Cups are contrasted with 4th place finishes in their World Cup 2018 and Euro Cup 2020 campaigns. Also 3rd tier was their 2022-23 Nations League campaign, where they were demoted from League B to League C. However, topping the group in 2024 is reminiscent of campaigns during their strong period in the 1990s and their 2000 and 2008 Euro Cup qualifications, which, with the exception of 2008, led to good results in the Cup.
All right, well, let's take a look at their Nations League run in 2022.
Yeah, as we mentioned, it ended in relegation. They won 2 of their 6 games, beating Finland and Bosnia at home, but otherwise lost twice to Montenegro and to Bosnia on the road. So it was actually a tight group. Only 4 points separated first place Bosnia from last place Romania. But Romania finished bottom, tied on points with Montenegro, again, who beat them twice, but with an inferior goal difference.
Yeah, wow. So demoted to League C, they'll be disappointed about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then we talked about inconsistency, and we can compare that campaign with their qualification run for this cup.
Yeah, Romania got off to a good start, albeit with wins over Andorra and Belarus, but then went on with 3 consecutive draws against Kosovo, Switzerland, and Israel. But then they went on a good run at the end, winning 4 of their 5 remaining games. So they finished undefeated in the group, and 5 points ahead of second place Switzerland. Switzerland are usually a pretty consistent team. So, yeah, pretty impressive. They also beat Switzerland in their final game, which assured them of first place.
Yeah, so yeah, they bested Switzerland there, but twice tied Belarus, so a bit of that inconsistency coming in. Belarus, the 4th place finisher there. And okay, well, we will leave Romania to the discussion later on and move on to Slovakia and begin with their kind of broader history. So Slovakia, who actually played as an independent nation shortly before World War II, otherwise descends from the intermittently successful Czechoslovakia, though it's actually the Czech Republic who officially inherit the mantle. Following their separation into 2 soccer nations from 1996, Slovakia did not reach a tournament until the 2010 World Cup, finishing in the middle of the table for most of those campaigns. They did come close in a couple of other World Cup campaigns besides, but were never really very close to reaching the Euro Cup until it expanded in 2016 to allow third-tier teams like Slovakia more chance. Slovakia proved a second-tier team in the 2010 World Cup, still their only appearance, and in the 2016 Euro Cup, passing the group stage in both. But they remain at a third-tier level despite reaching the Euro Cup consistently since its expansion.
Slovakia advanced from the group stage of the 2016 Euro Cup as a third-place finisher in their group and were quickly dismissed in the following round. They finished second in their 2018 World Cup campaign, but were lowest among the second-place finishers and did not advance, kind of drawing a bit of a short stick there. They finished third in their qualifying group for Euro 2020 and advanced to the playoffs. Then in the finals, finished third in the group stage again, but this time did not advance. They remain on the edge of reaching cups, teetering one way or the other, but not a strong force if they do make it. Their UEFA Nations League performance is even less convincing. Already in League C, having been relegated in 2020-2021, they had another poor campaign in 2022-23, which we'll talk about. Their 2024 Euro qualification was a bit more convincing, at least in terms of consistency, but cannot be taken as a sign of improvement since it was over third and fourth tier teams.
Yeah, and I think we'll take a look at that Nations League campaign 2022-23. They started in League C and came into the UEFA Euro Cup 2024 qualifying group as the 5th seeded tier. The 5th seeded team. Well, that was a bit of a slap in the face for them. Let's see what caused it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it was a poor Nations League result that really contributed. They actually failed to win a game at home, the competition being Kazakhstan, who beat them twice, Azerbaijan, and Belarus. Their only point at home, in fact, was a tie with Belarus, who they also beat on the road. Belarus finished bottom. But yeah, Slovakia's record was 2 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses from that group, from League C. And they certainly see themselves as a group, as a League B team. So disappointing there. They finished third out of the group of 4.
Yeah, really disappointing, especially among such weak competition there. Nevertheless, they're here at Euro 2024, so obviously did better in their qualifying campaign.
Yeah, and it was a competitive group, not least because Slovakia are much stronger than generally than a 5th tier team would suggest. So this was kind of one of the more interesting groups to follow, I found.
Yeah, definitely.
It started slowly with a home draw with Luxembourg, who ended up having a surprisingly good campaign. But they were actually pretty consistent. They lost to Portugal twice, but other than that home draw with Luxembourg, they won all their other away games. So that include taking 6 points off Bosnia, Iceland, and Liechtenstein.
Yeah, as you say, Luxembourg, a real surprise there. They finished in third place, 7 points ahead of Iceland. So a fabulous campaign. So in light of that, the tie with Luxembourg at the beginning maybe seemed like, the League C thing was continuing, but ended up being a fairly consistent result.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we will get back to Slovakia, but first we'll take a look at the fourth team here, Ukraine, who came in via the playoffs, and also a team that emerged from the breakup of the Soviet Union. So Ukraine's first official match was in 1992, after the breakup of the Soviet Union there, and they have come close to qualifying for almost every World Cup since their first entry in 1998. But have succeeded only once. In 5 of their 7 World Cup campaigns, they've reached a final playoff and lost it. They made the most of their single successful qualification. That was in 2006, where they reached the quarterfinal. The pattern is different in Euro Cup play. There they failed to reach the first 4 editions from their first in 1996 and reached a playoff only once. From 2012, they have appeared in the Cup consistently. They gained passage in 2012 by dint of co-hosting, and it's largely because of the tournament expanding that they have qualified since. In 2 of the 3 cases, they reached the Cup through a playoff. 2020, however, was a stronger campaign altogether, qualifying convincingly, and here also passing the group stage and the round of 16 for a quarterfinal finish, just like in the 2006 World Cup.
Yeah, good showing. Ukraine is usually on the edge of cups, either coming close to making it and failing, sometimes at the last step, as we saw, or else just making it and appearing weak once there. 2020 seems to be an exception, except for the fact that they were the last of the third place finishers in the group stage to advance to the finals. Thus, their recent performances are no different from their traditional results. And even if 2020 is argued as a notch better, the 2022 World Cup and 2024 Euro Cup qualification campaigns ran exactly as expected, both involving playoffs. Their 2022-23 parallels that in the Nations League, a second-place finish in League B. The harrowing invasion of Russia actually does not seem much to have impacted their play.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's take a look at their 2022-23 Nations League. It is League B, and how did they do?
They finished second, as you mentioned. They were really vying for top spot with Scotland. They only had 1 loss. That was a loss in Scotland, and could have overtaken Scotland for first place and promotion had they beaten Scotland at home on the final day, but Scotland managed to draw. But other than that, they bested Ireland and beat Armenia twice.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that last game would have been at home, because I think they have been playing on neutral ground recently. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, still, they could have taken the group and gotten promoted with a win there. Let's look at their qualifying campaign for this Euro 2024.
Yeah, so Ukraine came in as a 3rd seed, and it went more or less as predicted. They were in a tough group with England and Italy. They lost to both of those teams on the road, but actually tied them both at home. And then they were consistent, winning all games against North Macedonia and Malta. In the end, they actually finished tied on points with second place Italy. Both had 14 points, but Italy got second, which pushed Ukraine to the playoffs. The playoffs was based on their Nations League results. Their first match was against Bosnia, which they won 2-1. They actually scored in the 85th and 88th minutes to turn the game around. And then they met Iceland in the winner-take-all match, and Ukraine won 2-1, again coming from behind to win 2-1.
All right, so yeah, as we said, kind of always on the edge and kind of scraping their way into this tournament, but given their domestic situation, a good achievement.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's move on to part two. My graphic says part three, but it is part two, where we compare the teams to each other. So let's begin with the pots and the rankings within those pots that put them in this group.
Yeah, so the rankings were based on performance in qualifying and not necessarily on FIFA or UEFA rankings, so a little bit of a change. Belgium had the fourth best qualifying record of all teams, so they were a pot one team. Romania were group winners themselves, so they ended up in pot two. The pot three team was Slovakia. And then Ukraine, as a playoff winner, was automatically in pot four. So that's how it shapes up in this group.
Yeah, and they really were kind of deserved winners in the sense that they were ranked 21st in qualifying, so right behind the teams that made it in directly.
Yeah.
There. So just a quick comment from you here about whether these pots and rankings make it seem like a strong or a weak group.
In general, I would say a weak group. When you look at some of the big nations, Netherlands are pot three, Italy are pot four. I mean, I think if you ranked on world rankings, Romania would not be a pot two team, and they're probably pot three and four teams in general, other than Belgium, who would be pot one. So I think if you looked at rankings, it would be different, and they're probably, I guess, missing a true pot two team in this group. But credit to Romania, of course, for being the pot two team based on their qualifying campaign.
Yeah, but Romania often is that good in qualifying, at least, just not really bringing that form to the tournaments. But lest we get into a discussion, you actually had a nice transition to the rankings. This would be their FIFA and ELO rankings. Let's see how they size up there.
Yeah, so Belgium were fourth ranked in qualifying, but actually they're fourth ranked in the world, according to FIFA, and eighth ranked in ELO. As we mentioned, Belgium actually held number one spot in the FIFA rankings from December 2018 to December 2021, so a 3-year period. Mm-hmm. So obviously fourth and eighth represents a bit of a fall. They did reach first in ELO as well. Anything else to add?
Yeah, just that they were also first or second ranked even for a couple of years from 2014 to 16. So we said, which some may think is harsh, we said in the summary that they never really kind of lived up to that ranking, but they didn't really in terms of their final finishes.
That's right.
I should also say that it was they were below 10th in the ELO rankings from 2014 to 16, despite being much higher in the FIFA rankings. So once again, we kind of see ELO rankings as a bit more accurate.
Yeah, they fluctuate less. Going on to Romania, they are 43rd in FIFA and 48th in ELO. So that would suggest a much lower pot ranking than pot two, of course. Romania have been higher in the past. In 2018, they were 24th in FIFA. So they've kind of fallen from 20s and 30s to 40s and even the 50s in the world rankings over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and in the longer term, I think they've kind of risen and fallen like the tide in the 90s, definitely. In the 90s, they definitely would have been, probably in the top 20. So kind of going up and down. We're actually finding them at a bit of a low ebb here.
Yeah. The pot three team is Slovakia. They're 45th in FIFA, so that's 2 points behind Romania, who are 43rd, but they're joint 48th in ELO, which is interesting that they are ranked exactly the same. Slovakia, actually, like Romania, kind of 5 years ago were higher. They were in the 20s and 30s, but they've also dropped off a little bit, and dropping off kind of since the last Euros as neither team qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, we see that kind of in their League C games where they're probably losing rankings, just like Romania sometimes gains rankings through their qualification. But wow, it couldn't be much closer, hey?
Yeah.
In terms of ranking, at least. Let's see where Ukraine fits into that.
So Ukraine are kind of in between Belgium and the other two, but actually closer to Belgium. They're 22nd in FIFA rankings and 16th in ELO. So I guess they might have the claim to being the pot 2 team if there is one. Ukraine have been actually fairly consistent over the last probably 5 years. They've been kind of 22nd to 26th in FIFA, so very little fluctuation, and pretty consistent in ELO as well. Prior to that, they were a bit lower. They were kind of in the 30s, but pretty consistent for them recently, around the edge of top 20 in the world.
Yeah, edge is the word for them because, whether they make the tournament or not, they're on the edge. And then whether they, if they get there, they're kind of on the edge of reaching the final round. So maybe we should summarize, and then I'll ask if you agree with the rankings just quickly.
Sure. So Belgium are 4th in FIFA, 8th in ELO. Ukraine are 22nd in FIFA, 16th in ELO. And then Romania and Slovakia are 43rd and 45th in the FIFA rankings, and then both 48th in ELO. So we'll call it a tie.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned kind of a pot 2 team. I feel like Ukraine is a little bit highly ranked, especially in ELO rankings. For pot 2 team, but I consider them kind of a second to third tier team. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, third place is kind of where they end up in qualifying groups, which is why they've been in the playoffs so consistently. So that to me speaks to kind of a ranking more similar to Romania and Slovakia than to a still very strong Belgian team.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, we'll probably take that up as we go, but we're going to move on to head-to-head records and see how they've done against each other. We only look at official games like qualification games and games in tournaments. We don't consider friendlies in our records here.
Yeah, so Belgium and Romania, they met each other twice competitively, and each team winning at home.
Yeah, and that was in 1994, so not really relevant. Belgium weaker then, and Romania stronger, so times have changed.
Yeah.
Belgium and Slovakia.
Yeah, they have no history. They haven't met competitively.
All right, how about Belgium and Ukraine?
And same thing, they haven't met competitively. I guess it should be noted that Belgium is a very old team, but Slovakia and Ukraine are both teams that emerged in the 90s, so don't have the same length of history.
That's right. Well, how about Romania and Slovakia?
They've met 4 times, and Romania has a better record, winning 3 and drawing 1.
Yeah, also barely relevant. Both of those during Romania's strong period. The last time they met was in 2000. So we move on to Romania versus Ukraine.
They have not met either. These two neighboring countries. This will be the first competitive meeting between the two of them.
This section isn't going that well, Connor.
No, it's not shedding much light. What about Slovakia, Ukraine?
Well, we actually do have something here.
Yeah, 2 games, but it's a bit more recent history. Slovakia won 1 and they tied the other.
Right, and that was in 2016 Euro Cup qualifying, so maybe the only really relevant head-to-head here, giving Slovakia the edge over Ukraine there. And Connor, we move on to odds, and I finally have found odds to win the group. Until now, we've kind of been going on all I could find, which was their odds to win the tournament. But I'm much happier with these odds.
Yeah, so Belgium are heavily favored, as you might expect, with a 67% chance. Ukraine is next with 14%, and Romania is third with 12.5%, so fairly close. And Slovakia is given an 8% chance.
Okay, well, maybe we'll discuss or start the discussion with these odds, but actually maybe divide the discussion into kind of two parts, because Belgium is so far ahead there. We'll maybe talk about them and then the other group, which is more contentious. Do you see Belgium as this strong?
I do. I mean, I think it could have been even higher, in terms of their percentage to win the group, had they not had such a calamitous World Cup, which I think drew into question some of the older generation, and I think even some of the harmony of the camp was called into question. I think there was a bit of discord that came out, whether they were too old or not. So that throws in a little bit of doubt, but I think in general, Belgium are a cut above the other teams. They're the only true first-class team or first-tier team in the group.
Yeah, but I mean, they haven't always been. We saw that they were basically a third-tier team, not unlike the other ones from 2000 to 2012, where they didn't reach a tournament. Do you think they're in danger of kind of going back? Maybe not to that level, but to a second-tier level, let's say?
I think it's possible. I think they're a little ways from that still. I think there are still some world-class players, Lukaku and De Bruyne and some others who are still around, and they have some decent talent besides. But yeah, I do expect them to probably slide a little bit. I mean, I think the concept of a golden generation is that it really elevates the team to a height where they haven't been before, and that was the case. So I think inevitably they will slip. I probably wouldn't say third-tier team, but a second tier could be conceivable.
Yeah. Again, their strong qualification for this tournament kind of snuffed out that discussion a little bit, and they are bringing in some talent, maybe not the level of the golden generation, apart from maybe Akanji, but strong enough. But again, yeah, I think they just have to be careful not to lapse the way they did in the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah, and try to make the most of having some world-class players in their team still.
Yeah, and if we agree that they'll pass the group stage, just to dispense with Belgium here, how far do you think they'll get in the tournament?
I think semifinals is probably their limit. I don't see them quite as strong as some of the other teams. I think they would run into trouble. I don't think they have it in them to beat a bunch of great teams in a row. So I think quarterfinals, on the slightly disappointing end, or maybe semifinals on the slightly more positive end for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think semifinals would be a good finish, and quarterfinals more maybe the likely finish. Okay, let's move on to Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine. So we're seeing a couple of different things in the things that we looked at. If I go back to the rankings, we saw Ukraine pretty far ahead, really between Belgium and Romania and Slovakia, as you pointed out, yet only slightly ahead in the odds here. And Romania and Slovakia almost exactly the same in the rankings, but Romania given a fairly hefty point spread above Slovakia here.
Yeah, I think odds to win group is interesting because I think everyone expects Belgium to win the group. And then it's kind of, I kind of wonder what odds to be second in the group would be, whether that would extend Ukraine's advantage, because I think none of them are that likely to win the group individually.
Yeah.
But among the other three, would you agree, I guess, more with the FIFA rankings, that Ukraine is a cut above the other two?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of seeing them. As fairly even. Slovakia maybe a bit behind, and I'm not sure I really have a logical basis for it. But I do see Romania slightly ahead. Do you want me to speak to that, or do you want to comment just before I say why?
No, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
It's just that Romania, maybe I have a fondness for them because they did go to that first World Cup in Uruguay, and I think that's like a week-long boat journey either way. So you gotta credit them for that. But more recently, though, like they had that strong period in the 90s, which the other teams haven't experienced, and they're strong in qualifying. Even recently, though, they haven't done that well in tournaments. I don't know if you remember 2008, where we were fairly enthusiastic about Romania, but they didn't really live up to it. But their qualification campaigns have definitely been second, sometimes even bordering on first tier. They haven't really brought that to the cup, but to me, that gives them, maybe a bit of depth that the other teams don't have.
Do you think being now a League C Nations League team is a knock against that, or do you see that as a bit of a blip in what was admittedly a close group?
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't really, if I factored that into my logical thinking, I'd have to kind of pull them down a notch. I haven't really held that against them. So I may be off base here. It's just a feeling that they're a bit stronger than the other two teams. How do you feel about Romania?
I mean, they're a team that have kind of alternated qualification and then not for this tournament. You're right. I think they put in some good qualifying campaigns, but they're still kind of like Slovakia and Ukraine. They're kind of on the edge of qualifying. Notwithstanding a first place finish here, they sometimes do, they sometimes don't. They're sometimes close, they're sometimes playoff. So I think generally all three of these teams are a little bit more happy to be there because they're not teams that get there year after year after year. And I probably would favor Ukraine a little bit just in the fact that they have a bit more of a history of getting beyond the group stage and to the quarterfinals and kind of doing well when they're there. So for what that's worth, I see I give the edge to Ukraine on that basis, whereas Romania, sometimes when they get to the tournaments, they don't bring that same qualifying form in.
Yeah, that's true. Do you feel the Romania coming in as the 8th ranked team in the system that they used means that they have better form, or do you think Ukraine's maybe 2 playoff cup wins gives them the form?
I don't put too much stock in that. And just when you look at the group, Ukraine finished behind England and Italy, and had Romania been in the group, I would have expected them to finish in the same spot. Versus Romania had probably a relatively easier qualifying group. I think what being in pot 2 gives you Romania more than anything is just an opportunity, a real opportunity. And I think all of the 3 teams that we're talking about will sense that in the absence of maybe a regular pot 1 or pot 2 team, this is an opportunity to try and finish second in the group or certainly advance in 3rd place.
Yeah, I mean, I do take your point about the Ukraine. We have said that they're on the edge, but here they're on the edge, having come on out of a tough qualification campaign. Not many other teams had England and Italy, facing them, and they tied on points with Italy, and then won 2 playoff games. So that does speak well to them. Do you see Slovakia as far behind them as the odds suggest, or maybe more like the rankings, which have them pretty much tied with Romania?
I put them a little bit down from Romania, just again, not kind of on the strength of qualifying. I think Slovakia too, I see them a little bit as a team kind of on a little bit of a downward trend. I think a couple of years ago they had quite an exciting team with players in top leagues all across Europe. And I think some of those good players, Marek Hamšík most notably, have departed. And I think their rankings have reflected a bit of a drop from kind of a 20s, 30s position to more 40s, 50s. So, they did well to get here, but I do see them as on perhaps a bit of a downward trend.
Yeah, I think Marek Hamšík may still be on the team, but certainly he's aging out a little bit and not the star he once was for them. On the other hand, Slovakia, we saw that they had the recent record over Ukraine, besting them in 2016. They also beat Poland in the 2020 Euro Cup, which is a team I'd say similar in quality to Romania and Ukraine. So they do have those things arguing in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, if we say, or if we even agree that they're perhaps the weakest team, it's not by much, and it's not by much beyond 2nd place. So it's not a stretch for them to finish 2nd place in this group for sure.
Yeah, generally, I think we have kind of been ignoring the Nations League, but 2 teams, Romania and Slovakia, now lingering in Nations League C. Nations League C. That doesn't speak well for either of them, hey?
No, it doesn't. Whereas Ukraine, on the other hand, we're quite close to promotion to League A. So, I mean, Nations League, it's only a 6 games, it's not a huge sample size, but the Nations League would point to Ukraine as being stronger.
Kind of in line with the FIFA rankings, with both ranking systems there. In terms of going beyond the first round, obviously one of them is going to. Do you see any of them, say, getting beyond the round of 16?
I think once you're in the round of 16, it gets very, very difficult. I mean, there's always a chance you get perhaps a favorable draw, but there's so many good teams. I think the odds of that are not that great. So I think these teams, they kind of are a bit on the edge of making it, and then certainly, on the edge of getting past the group stage, sometimes doing so in the third position. So I think getting out of the group stage is probably a good achievement, and I don't see any team getting much beyond that. But am I being too negative for you?
I don't think you're being too negative, but I mean, one of them is going to finish second, and so that might give them a decent pairing in the round of 16. And so much just comes down to the day there that they could have a good day and get beyond the quarterfinals. So I wouldn't myself say the quarterfinals is out of the question for any of them. I would kind of say the semifinals would be a real surprise for any of these teams.
Yeah, I would point to Slovakia losing twice to Portugal in qualifying. Ukraine being competitive but failing to beat England or Italy. Romania did best in Switzerland, but they're maybe not quite at that top level. So I think these teams should have shown it even in qualifying that they probably struggle to compete against Europe's best.
Yeah, definitely. There's always room for a bit of surprise, but we can't really predict that. Any of these teams could have a good tournament and take us by surprise. But on the surface, it doesn't look like any of Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine will really get much into the final stages.
One question I want to ask you is: do you see the self-defeating kind of prospect of every team beating up each other, and perhaps this being a group that doesn't have a third place team advance, because you kind of rely on a weak team or at least needing a win to get through? Do you see there being ties here that perhaps kind of sabotage these teams?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, these are the kind of groups that end up with just 2 teams passing, because they kind of take points off each other, and then, as you say, 1 point is lost when teams draw. So quite possibly that could be the case. How do you think?
I think it's a real possibility here. I mean, you need a win to advance. But yeah, if there's a bunch of ties, like you said, that's 2 points instead of 3, and you need to kind of accumulate points to be a best third place team. So if there are a lot of draws, and the teams I think are close enough together that is possible, then yeah, we may only see 2 teams from this group.
And honestly, it would be a fitting end to this group, because we've talked about at least Slovakia and Ukraine, and maybe Romania to a lesser extent, being kind of teams on the edge. So you could just see them finishing 5th and 6th amongst the third place teams.
As has happened to them before, which we covered in the discussion.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to differ here, but I won't blame you for. I won't blame you for not laying down your cards, but I'm asking you to lay them down right now. How do you see this group ending?
I think Belgium will win it. I think Ukraine will be second. And I see Romania and Slovakia as the closest question. So I guess I agree with the rankings. But I'll give the edge to Romania and have Slovakia in last place.
Okay, and you pretty much made a good argument for Ukraine there as the second place finisher. My logical brain agrees with you, but my feelings still hold out for Romania. So I'm going to say Belgium first, Romania second, Ukraine third, and Slovakia fourth. And since you introduced the question, I'll say the third place team doesn't advance.
All right. Yeah, I don't see the bottom team in Slovakia, which we both said, I don't see them going home with 0 points. I see them with 1 or 2 points, maybe even a win. But which would be damaging possibly to the third place team. So I agree with you.
Yeah, that's a good point to add at the end. I don't see Slovakia getting nothing out of this either.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've completed 5 of the 6 groups, so we will come back for the last one next time around.
I'll see you then.
We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Make Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this media cast.